What's up guys, thanks for stopping by, I hope you're doing good. For today's video, I'm going to be doing another Valheim gameplay challenge where I'll be defeating all bosses with just the flint knife and no armor. I hope you enjoy this video, let's jump into it. Okay, so first of all, I want to start by explaining my approach and the setup for this challenge. After the last challenge video I made, which involved extremely long gameplay sessions searching for specific mats, I wanted to do a challenge that was literally all about boss fights. So, in the interest of time, I decided to use a New Game Plus setup where I brought in a pre-made character with max level skills, or at least max level important skills, so not so much unarmed.
Voy a la playa, ya subió la marea.
And I also brought in a full inventory with items I wanted to use for this challenge. This makes little to no difference on the actual challenge level, however. It just saves a little bit of time because the purpose of this video is to show that it is actually possible to defeat these bosses with the flint knife and no armor. I also decided to play on a set seed. I will actually put the seed on the screen now and I'll leave it in the description too. I played on a seed that I already knew, and it is actually the seed that is used in the current set seed world record for speedrunning. And this was just so we didn't waste any time trying to find bosses, because again, this challenge is all about actual gameplay and boss fights. So with that being said, let's jump into the core challenges. So I think the core challenges of beating all the bosses with the flint knife and no armor are pretty self-explanatory. So I'm not going to go into it for every single boss, but I will explain the two bosses that are slightly more complicated to beat in this challenge. The first is Bonemass. The combination of Bonemass's poison attacks and him constantly summoning mobs means that when trying to melee Bonemass, you are going to take a lot of AoE damage. There's a huge area of effect of the actual poison, but just the sheer quantity of mobs means if you're going to be standing right up close to Bonemass trying to kill him with a knife, you're also going to be taking a lot of damage from mobs, especially with no armor, where skeletons and any archer can do a lot of damage. So Bonemass is a core challenge because of their insane AoE and the amount of mobs. Modder is also a core challenge. This was actually one that some people thought was impossible because obviously she flies through the air. So the main issue for Modder is going to be surviving in the mountain in the first place, and also how do we kill her with the knife from the ground. That just about covers the core challenges, so let's jump into our first boss fight. Okay, so admittedly Eikthyr still goes down really easy. By getting a sneak attack, the second Eikthyr spawns, pretty much any weapon in the game will destroy a huge portion of Eikthyrs health right away. And because of the backstab bonus of the flint knife, the stealth attack is actually particularly powerful for an early game weapon. The way to time this is to listen to the summon sound of the boss, and to time your secondary attack right in the middle of the silence before the boss spawns. This is a great technique for all bosses with any weapon. But anyway, now it's time for the Elder. This is where things start to get interesting. First of all, by using the same strat from the previous boss to get an initial stealth attack on the Elder, we deal a decent amount of damage right away. But obviously, the DPS of the flint knife is pretty low. So the main strat with the Elder is to stay close to him and keep spamming the primary attack. Then when he goes to do his big stomp AoE attack, do a dodge roll to make sure you don't take any damage. You gotta do it just at the right time before his foot hits the floor, and ideally you just roll into him, because that keeps you planted right in front of him to start doing more primary attacks as soon as your roll is over. You can rinse and repeat this strategy until you start to summon the vines. Now the vines are very RNG where they can appear, and if they appear close by, this combined with these stomp attacks becomes a problem to keep dodging. So I decided that the best way to do this was to basically just walk a short distance away from the Elder, and I'm basically aiming for a spot that is really close by where the vines can't reach me. I don't want to move too fast or go too far away because that will trigger the Elder to do his ranged attack. So just by taking a few small steps to position out the reach of the vines, it kites the Elder towards me again, and then we go back to doing primary attacks and rolling every time he stomps. After a little practice, I was able to take care of the Elder pretty quickly. Okay, so Bonemass is actually where things get a little bit more complicated. I did originally try to do this boss fight without using Corpse Run, but as far as I can tell, it's pretty much impossible, and I'll explain why. All bosses in this game do actually gradually restore health over time, they just do it very slowly. And what actually happens with Bonemass when you're trying to beat him with the flint knife with no armor is you can go and get some attacks in and do a decent amount of damage, but with the combination of his poison and all the mobs that he spawns in, at some point you're going to have to walk away and heal. Now, once you've used your health potion and then go back in for some more attacks, the same will happen again, only this time your cooldown for your health potion will be active, and so you can't instantly heal, and you'll actually have to wait for the cooldown to be over to heal. And during this time, Bonemass pretty much just regens the same amount of damage that he just did. So I decided to use Corpse Run. So my strat for this was to build a bed close by first of all and set it as my spawn point. Then, making sure I just had one item in my inventory, I would walk over to the altar and do /kill me in the chat box in the bottom right. This actually allows your character to commit suicide, and it also places a tombstone exactly where I want it. You don't have to worry about de-skilling too much in this scenario because of the skill loss prevention buff that gets triggered every time you die. As long as this buff is active, next time you do the kill me command, you won't de-skill any further, so losing skills is not a problem. Like I said, I set up a lot of these corpse runs because on Bonemass in particular, we're doing very low DPS. So this was the easiest way I could think of to kill him with the flint knife, because without constantly doing damage to him, he basically regens faster than you can do this kind of damage. But with this strategy, even though it was absolute chaos with the mobs, we were able to take down Bonemass pretty easily. Okay, so the next closest boss on this seed was actually Yagluth. But before we jump into that, I just want to let you guys know, I did actually live stream the entire process of me doing this challenge. So if you want to see what happened during the making of this video in more detail, or you don't believe anything you see, click the card in the top right or the link in the description to get the playlist of the whole stream archive of me doing this live on stream. Okay, so for Yagluth, I actually used the same AI manipulation technique as I did for the Valheim in reverse challenge. This is where I dig a hole in the ground and cover it with floor tiles so Yagluth can't attack us, and so he clips through the floor to enable us to kill him without taking the AoE fire damage, whilst also having a workbench in the hole with us so we can infinitely repair our weapons. I went into this slightly more in depth in the Valheim in reverse video, so if you've not seen that video, I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. So yeah, believe it or not, I actually did get the relatively rare raid event, You Are Being Hunted, seconds after defeating Yagluth. So instantaneously I was being attacked by a pack of wolves. This definitely made things a little more interesting, but ultimately it didn't have a large impact on the rest of the challenge. I basically just ran straight into the mountain and tried to find a high point at the top that no wolf could get up until most of the wolves are de-aggroed, and then if there was any wolves that were going to be in the way, I took care of them with the flint knife. But this of course is where we start to prepare for modder, and this is where things get interesting. First of all, I used frost resistance potions the entire time I was in the mountain to make sure I didn't freeze to death, and because I knew this seed already, getting the eggs wasn't a challenge. However, I knew it was likely that I was going to die whilst fighting modder, so I wanted to put a spawn down. But the problem with the modder boss fight is that it's extremely likely that she destroys any structures you place down, and golems on the mountain can also destroy your bed, which means you're going to be sent back to your world spawn, which in a run like this could have prevented us from completing the challenge. My solution to this was to actually dig a ring around the base of the modder altar. If you dig down at the edge of the modder altar, you can actually see that the rim sticks out a little bit. So then if you dig into the base, you can effectively dig a circle around the altar with the rim of the altar acting as a roof. And the altar itself, as well as the actual terrain, is immune to modders' attacks. This gave me a sort of secret little base where I could go and retreat to recover HP, and it also gave me a shelter where I could put down a workbench to repair my knives, and also a bed so I could respawn nearby modder, which would allow me to continue the boss fight even if I died and get back into the action before she regen too much health. The way I went about defeating modder with the knife was simply by kiting her to open areas I knew she could land. Basically, the way modder's AI works is that if you're standing in a place where she can't land, most likely she will not land unless you are close to something she can land on. So if you're standing somewhere where she physically won't fit, most likely she will stay in the air the whole time and just continue to do a ranged attacks. This would make it impossible to defeat her with the knife, but by sticking around in relatively flat areas where I knew she could land, it's just a matter of time until she would fly down, perch somewhere near me, which gives me the opportunity to get in some damage with the flint knife. While she's in the air, all I'm doing is standing still and waiting for her to do a ranged attack, and the second she does a ranged attack, I immediately start dodging her projectiles. And once her attacks are over, I'm making sure I'm going back to standing in a good position where I know she can land. After she perches and I start my flint knife attacks, I'm focused on getting as much damage in as possible, and anytime she tries a melee attack or when she breathes ice at us, I'm simply doing a dodge roll in her direction. This stops us from taking damage and keeps us in position to keep spamming primary attack while she's on the ground. Eventually she takes off and the process starts all over again, and if I die, I respawn in the bed under the altar and quickly go and grab my stuff and carry on this strategy fast enough to prevent a regen in health. This was definitely the most complicated part of the challenge, but it was actually super fun to do. Not to mention, I got this awesome Drake kill as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video so far. Before we wrap up the video, I'm going to leave you with some footage of the modder fight. Alright guys, that's just about going to do it for this one. Don't forget to leave a like and a nice positive comment if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. I do actually stream challenges just like this one live on Twitch and on this YouTube channel, so I'll leave a link in the description to that. If you want to support the content financially, then you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/NickRawcliffe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a good one.